Hello and welcome to today's masterclass, which is all about reinventing happiness and success through the psychology of flow. My name is Gregg, and I am so excited to guide you through today's masterclass, where I really want to emphasize and show you how we can use the psychology of flow to become our full selves so that we can realize our full potential. I think within each of us, there is a real desire to become who we really are. But it's a struggle and it's a challenge because we learn to easily become more of who we should be. And we can really lose ourselves in the process. And it can feel like an overwhelming task to figure out who you are. Feels like a huge daunting question. I know that's certainly how it felt like me. I don't know if this resonates with you, but when my first journey first started, it kind of could be summed up with this sentence: I should be happy, but I'm not. And there was almost a silent shame and secrecy around this feeling. I had ticked life's boxes. I had been a good girl. I had done what was expected of me. I had the privilege, to get an education, to go to school, to get that job. I pushed myself, for promotions. I pleased other people. I was a good person. And life looked good on the outside. It did. Life looked good on paper. But on the inside, I felt frustrated, frazzled, overwhelmed, close to burnout, and not happy. Not depressed enough that I needed to, go see a doctor and get some form of medical intervention, but equally not happy about life and not really sure what to do about it. And so perhaps you can resonate with this. I tried a lot of different things. I read a lot of self-help books. I went to a lot of motivational seminars and went to go and see speakers, people who could maybe uplift me or show me where I was going wrong. I told myself I needed to go with thicker skin, or I needed to be more positive or grateful. I tried to bend and twist myself into whatever it was that I needed to be in order to feel good enough. And that was really the core issue. I didn't feel good enough in myself. And because I didn't feel good enough, I didn't feel worthy, all of my behaviors were shaped around meeting that need. I used natural parts of me in unnatural roles. I used my achiever side to cover up my insecurities with accolades and status. And that made me feel good, but never good enough for long enough. I used my thoughtful side to please other people, my empathetic side to really understand what people needed and then give that to them. And as a result, I was beginning to feel resentful, not myself. I would go to bed at night absolutely exhausted and just pull the duvet over and think, is this it? Is this all there is to life? And does anyone else feel this way? Because how can you describe to someone how you feel when life looks good on paper and externally everything looks fine, but internally it's an absolute mess? I didn't even know where to begin with that conversation. And I had this real aha moment that it wasn't about bending or twisting myself into yet another form of who I was. It was about getting back to the core of what I wanted. And I really realized how disconnected I was from this when I went to one particular motivational talk on a very cold night in the UK, huddled in this huge amphitheater filled with maybe 100, 150 people. And the speaker on the stage said, here's a really simple exercise. Write down 3 things that make you happy, that you do just for you, for no other reason, for no reward. It's validating within itself, this experience. And I couldn't think of anything. As I watched other people in this theater grab their notebooks and their pens and frantically scribble down 3 things, I stood blankly at mine, and the only 3 things that I could think of were the same 3 imaginary hobbies that I'd written down in my resume when I was like 15 or 16. Cycling, reading, swimming. And that's all I could write down. And I realized that I had become really disconnected from who I was, and that I didn't know how to get back there. And so I started to observe this trend, not only in myself, but in other people. What I noticed was that we in society were generally living by this traditional cause and effect happiness paradigm, that we had this internal formula that we all seem to be blindly following, which was me plus A equals happiness. Me plus once I reach that certain dress size, me plus when I meet that romantic partner, when I get that job, when I have the house, when I build that business, when I write my book, when I have that thing, whatever it is for you specifically, will bring me happiness. And as a result, many people, myself included, very much so, climbed the mountain, trudged up there, invested all the energy to reach that goal, telling myself I can slow down and I can be happy and I can enjoy life. Like once I get there, everything will be fine. And what I recognized was what I was climbing towards was not necessarily specifically about the goal. What it was trying to meet that need of being good enough, worthy enough. And so I strive for goal after goal after goal, running on the treadmill of life, waiting to get to that static destination, only to get there and balance on the pinnacle for a little bit, because it does make you feel good. You get that reward, you get that praise, you get that status, and you feel like I'm here, I made it. And then another mountain appears. And nothing really feels good enough for long enough. And then you're back on that climb and you're moving in a different direction. And you're always hungry for more. You're always trying to satisfy that need from the external. And it is as helpful as trying to strap sandwiches all over your body in order to quench your inner hunger. And what I wanted when I observed this pattern was an alternative. I thought there has to be a different way to live life. This cannot be it. There has to be someone who's written something about how we can become fully ourselves and as a result change our experience of life, and indeed have that ripple effect so that we change others' experience of life. And this is when I turned to my trusty psychology. It's like my safety. It offers so much guidance. And I discovered Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, a Hungarian psychologist, flow theory. I started to weave in other humanistic psychologists such as, Maslow, who you may know from the hierarchy of needs, Rogers, Adler, all these beautiful theorists psychologists that talked about the same thing. When we become who we really are, we feel fully alive and we don't chase these needs to be satisfied. We stop climbing the mountain and we flip it on its head. And this is really what flow offers. It takes the mountain, it takes that happiness belief system and it turns it upside down. In flow, the starting place is, I am enough. I have everything that I need. I know how to meet my own needs. I don't rely on the external as much. And the more we become wholly who we are and have that self-awareness, the more life opens up. It becomes this expansive experience where we have a deeper sense of meaning, purpose, joy. We know our authentic self. You know, we volunteer for maybe the extra project at work, not because we expect our manager to give us something in return. We do that nice gesture for a friend, not because we expect them to praise us and satisfy our need for love and belonging. We do it because we want to. Because these experiences excite us, they light up our life, and we're not looking for that reward because we feel good enough from within. What's even better about flow and more exciting about flow is that in the chaos of my mind of trying to work out who I was, flow seemed to offer some form of formula that if we have a personally compelling goal, that we perform to the best of our current level of ability, and we understand what progress looks, feels, and sounds like, that this brings us into this flow state, which ultimately brings us into an increased state of happiness. And so I became fascinated, fixated with flow, and have studied it ever since. You know, from positive psychology into humanistic psychology and everything in between, because I really believe that it offers real guidance to that overwhelming question: who am I? What is my purpose? What do I want from life? So I've shared a little bit about my personal story, but here's a little bit about my professional background, and I'll tell you where kind of like flow brought me on the journey as well, because it has completely transformed my life. So my name is Gregg. I am a psychologist. I'm a member of the British Psychological Society, and I have just over a decade of experience working in coaching in various guises, from business coaching, working with high growth startups, entrepreneurs, corporates such as IKEA. I've done some consultancy work for the European Commission. I'm an accredited coach, neurolinguistic programming practitioner. And now I run my own business, The Power to Reinvent, which is really focused on how we can use the psychology of flow to reinvent happiness and success. I am also a published author of 2 books, one which is actually all about flow. It's called Find Your Flow, and I'm going to touch on this in a little bit. And all of that sounds great. That's all the external stuff. And it's really just to share with you that you're in safe hands, and that I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And it's not kind of this, you know, I read this in a book, or this worked for me and therefore it should work for you. Flow offers a framework in which to find yourself, but your journey will be different from mine, and the results that you get out of working with flow will be entirely different than they should be. It's really about you finding your own path and becoming the unique individual that you are. What flow really offered me was this realization that I wasn't broken, that there wasn't anything wrong with me, that I didn't have to prove myself, and that everything that I needed was already inside. It increased my sense of self-trust within myself. I feel at harmony and ease with who I am. And as a result, I've gone on to do things that I never thought were possible. This is a photo of me back in 2017, when I was exhausted from climbing up those mountains and always chasing more. I was exasperated from life. I was overwhelmed. I really think that this photo represents almost kind of the insides of my consciousness and cognitive state at that time. It was just absolutely cluttered, overwhelmed, didn't know what to clear out, didn't know what belonged to me, what parts of me were mine, what parts of me weren't. You know, was I kind of, you know, a natural achiever? Was I a thoughtful, empathetic, good person? Or had I developed all those qualities in order to satisfy the needs that I had within myself? And so I decided that this void that I was in wasn't my punishment, but it was a wake-up call, an opportunity to start afresh and really lean into who I was as a person. So this photo is actually me clearing out all of my stuff. I sold all my stuff, my house, my car, I quit my job and headed off with a backpack and honestly kind of no clue what I wanted to do with my life. Really legitimately no idea. I think instantly I became, an overnight worry to family, a concern for friends as they kind of, looked on like, is she okay? Should someone intervene? And yet I had this deep knowing and trust that somehow this was what I was meant to do. And as part of that journey, I really, let's go back. Haven't finished that bit yet. As part of that journey, that's whenever I really discovered flow. And I became obsessed with how, when I felt in flow, how that gave me glimpses of who I really was. It was almost like the invisible self becomes visible in those moments where self-consciousness, disappears. I'm no longer worrying what other people think. I'm not filtering my thoughts or my experience. That my sense of time disappears and distorts, and I'm just at one with the world, at one with myself and at one with the world. And the more I noticed this, the more I became myself and opportunities arose. I recognized my love of writing and research and developing models. And as a result of quitting my job back then in 2017 and leaving everything behind, I've since gone on to publish 2 books with my publisher. I have set up my own business, The Power to Reinvent. I still live out of my backpack and travel around the world and have this real hunger and sense of adventure. And most importantly, I feel really at ease with who I am. That doesn't mean that there's not layers to shed. It's an ongoing process, but it's one that I'm not frightened of anymore. Not really frightened of myself. I'm curious and intrigued. And I really think that this is what flow can offer us as individuals and society as a whole. When we're out of flow, we choose our experiences in an attempt to validate an unmet need. So when I observed my life, and indeed when I started to notice these patterns in the people that I worked with, often a lot of unhealthy motivation came from these unmet needs. Maslow referred to them as need deficiencies, in the same way that we are deficient in, say, something like vitamin A, so too can we have these emotional deficiencies that become these unhealthy motivators. For me, for example, it was achieving as a way of covering up my insecurities or people pleasing in order to feel that sense of love and belonging and avoid being rejected or criticized by others. But in the process, then we're always chasing and hungry for more, versus when we feel in flow, we choose experiences that are validated by the experience alone. Our needs are met, the self is in harmony, and we interact with the world, with ourselves in an entirely new way. For example, when I was writing my blog and writing the books, the writing process was its own reward. I loved getting lost in the words and the research and coming up with ways to do things. And it was less about, will the book be loved? Will I be loved? This book will show everybody that I was right and they were wrong. It wasn't about that. Life becomes its own validating experience when we live from this place of flow, because we're always starting from that place that I am enough. And when a need arises, I know how to meet that need for myself. And so through this process, we become who we really are and fulfill that unique potential. This is just an insight into all my scribblings when I first discovered flow. I actually found this book that you can see there with like the green highlighter and my crazy drawings of a sailboat and my head exploding. This is like way back. This is like 20, before I even quit my job. And I clearly intuitively must have had a connection that the flow was going to be the thing that changed my life. I even wrote it in, massive letters at the top in purple. And it has been this mind-blowing, incredible experience to learn about the psychology of flow and to implement it as a guide, as a little milestone markers along the way to figure out who I am, what I want from life. And I hope in this masterclass that I can share a bit more about how you can do that. So if you're feeling a little bit lost, if you're feeling life looks good on paper, if you're struggling with that secret shame and you don't really know how to, tell your friends, I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know who I am and I have no idea where to begin, the flow will offer you that comfort that you're not broken. This isn't your punishment. In fact, this is a calling to really tap into who you are and what you want from life so that you can make that signature impact on the world. So I'd like you just to take a moment just to think about, what does flow mean to you? When you hear that word, what does it conjure up? Whether that's a feeling, whether that's a visual image, whether there are certain words that spring to mind. If you have a pen and paper ready, like amazing, just take a moment to write that down. Or just think of it in your head. I'll just give you a couple of seconds. Okay, great. Hopefully you have some words and some images. Obviously, I wish it was interactive and I could speak to you and find out what specifically you wrote down. But typically when I do this exercise as part of workshops, people will say words like ease, feels easier, harmony. People talk about visualizing a river and kind of like moving with the current rather than resisting it. People talk about, it's just kind of like relaxing and it feels like serenity and harmony and effortlessness. What's really beautiful is this really highlights that I don't need to define flow for you. On an intuitive, instinctive level, we already know what flow is. We don't need a psychology definition to wrap around it. We know that it feels like ease. We know it feels like harmony, like effortlessness, that we're kind of moving with the current of life rather than resisting moving against it. And what's really interesting is, that's really exactly how flow was discovered. It was discovered in the 1970s by a Hungarian psychologist, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, because he was observing artists at work and he noticed that they were fully immersed in the task at hand, so much so that when a bit of the ceiling even gave way, the artists didn't flinch. They were just completely engaged. He refers to flow for this reason as the optimal state of consciousness. And what he also observed was that the experience of creating that art was validating in itself. There was no guarantee that that artist was going to sell that piece for $1 million or that it was going to make him or her famous. It was a self-validating experience, an expression of the self, an engagement and involvement with life. It was who they really are. They were expressing that through their art, through their actions. And that's really what flow is. The more we can harness our flow, the more we feel that deep sense of meaning, purpose, ease, and serenity. As we become less of who we think we should be, we stop resisting who we really are, and we become the fullest expression of ourselves. There are a lot of definitions of what flow is. Like I said, the optimal state of consciousness, total engagement in life. Some people, the most common one, perhaps in kind of like mainstream, is when we feel our best and perform our best. For me, flow is when we are fully ourselves. It offers a scientific guide to getting back to the core of who we are. And in this fully human state, we become superhuman. So flow for a long time has been publicized, advertised, hooking people in for the superhuman benefits that it has, that it can help us achieve more in less time, that it can optimize our performance. But really, the true beauty of flow comes when we become fully ourselves, and all those benefits are felt as a result of that. You know, it's not the other way around. And here are some of the superhuman benefits that you can expect to feel the more you find your flow. A study by McKinsey and Co, for example, found, you know, an increase in productivity by over 500%, 430 increase in creative problem solving. It's healed is the secret to happiness. It gives our life meaning. The past, the present, and the future make sense. We have a faster level of skill acquisition, and synchronicities increase. This is something that Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi and indeed humanistic psychologist Maslow touched on. You know, there's almost this like mysticism, this kind of mystical experience that people have more frequently when they're in flow, when people and opportunities appear at the right time. That is certainly my experience with flow. You know, I left my job in 2017, and within 2018 started my business. And then within kind of 6 months of running the Part of Reinvent, posted one day randomly online, because I really had nothing to post that day. And I saw my journal was open. I created this journal system for flow that's all based on flow theory. And I took a really quick photo of it. I popped it up on my Instagram. I didn't think twice about it. And I got an email from one of my followers saying, hi, I'm an editor for a large publisher in New York, and I really think that this is going to make a big, this would make a great book. Would you be interested in pitching for a book deal? It's like, sure, frantically Googling, you know, how do you even write a book proposal? And that resulted in the publication of my first book, Find Your Flow, and fulfilled a real childhood dream of mine to become an author. And I think that is a beautiful way for Find Your Flow to come into the world, because it really is flow in action. That increase in skills, that increase in creativity, becoming who you are, and as a result, people and opportunities aligning with you. So finding your flow is really all about finding yourself. What I noticed was that for me personally, I needed to reaffirm on a daily basis that, you know, life was a validating experience, that I had everything that I needed. I noticed that in order to stay in my flow more, that I needed to really pay attention to where it occurred and integrate it more into my life. I knew that finding my flow and becoming who I was really involved an understanding of learning how to integrate all those different parts of me, learning how to meet my own needs internally so that those different parts could be in alignment and serve kind of the self as a whole, rather than being the natural parts and unnatural roles, you know, using my achiever side, for example, to cover up my insecurities, rather than just, you know, letting my achiever side motivate me and move me forward in its natural capacity. I also recognize that an important part of finding my flow and becoming who I was being able to reflect on the day, you know, living in 24-hour blocks and really leaning into a lot of the metrics that you have within your day that often go unnoticed, you know, little glimmers of moments of flow, or noticing repeat patterns, or recognizing that's interesting that I reacted in that way. I'm getting more curious about myself so that I could not only celebrate what went well and really activate that internal reward system so that I always felt enough, but also lean into the things that really weren't going so well in an objective and healthy way, recognizing that there is no such thing as kind of a good emotion or a bad emotion, but there's this synthesis within both, and that those negative emotions and those areas of discomfort actually really offered the opportunity to cast a light on things that I still needed maybe to change or learn how to give myself, and that they could be a really useful tool to jolt me into action. And so these were kind of the core things that I observed. If I am to live in flow and if I am to find my flow, I really need to make it more part of a daily practice, because honestly, the world is so busy that I could easily see myself just getting swept up, repeating the same patterns, and then being spat out at the other side with the same realization that I need to become myself. And so this is how the journal system for flow was really created. It was created out of my own personal need. I never thought it would become anything. I certainly never in my wildest dreams would have thought that it would have ended up in a book, which is amazing. But it came out of a need that I had recognized how incredible living in flow was, and that I wanted that to be part of a daily practice that I revisited time and time again, almost this ritual with myself, that keeping that connection to myself alive. And this is how the Journal for Flow system was born. It's all based on flow theory, proven positive psychology, and designed to fit really easily into our everyday life so that we can continually find our flow and tap into that unique current of our life. And it's really simple. I think often we can overlook the simple things and assume that they're too easy. Oh, it can't be that easy. It's got to be something way more difficult. When actually the beauty comes when you can take something that's really, really complex and quite hard to understand and actually distill it down into a really simple practice that you can use every day. So Morning Grateful Flow is really just a simple gratitude practice. It's writing down 3 things that you're grateful for at the start of your day. This lays the foundation for flow, because when we feel good, we're able to focus and channel our attention into what matters most. Most importantly, it really helps reaffirm life. It validates life. I am alive. Look at all the things that are around me. This is amazing. This is an incredible experience. I'm so happy to be on this big blue planet spinning in space, as myself. It's just the most beautiful way to wake up versus, picking up the phone like I used to do, scroll through the thoughts of others before ever considering my own. So Morning Grateful Flow is just a beautiful way to wake up. Forward Focus is about living with intention. It's here you set 3 high value priorities. These are things that you must do. They may not be exciting. They're probably going to be boring, adult stuff like do your taxes, buy your expenses. Mine generally involves some form of admin because I don't really like things like that. Put your washing on, whatever it is for you. And high value priorities aren't necessarily about, they'll make you feel amazing about life, but it brings an acceptance around there are just some things in life that you just have to do to keep it functioning, and that's okay. So you don't resist it, rather than kind of thinking, oh, I really need to do my expenses, but I'll do them later because they make me feel uncomfortable. And then it creates problems further on down the line. This is just a lovely acceptance of, what? It may not be the most exciting thing in the world, but I'm going to get in front of it and ahead of it before it creates resistance. These are balanced out then with 3 high flow priorities. These are activities when you feel in flow. This really helps you structure your day around flow and connect deeper to what flow means to you, really an expression of your unique skills and capabilities. Also, it's a great opportunity to really tap into, what does create flow for me? When do I lose track of time? When do I become really involved in the task at hand? Where does time speed up or slow down? Who am I with? What am I doing? and then just pop those into a schedule for the day. That helps us create that clear goal, that personally compelling goal. Total flow is the last part of your morning system, and it is really a source of the immediate feedback that's required for flow. And what this does is you script out what you will see, hear, and feel as your day unfolds. This is based on imagery scripting, a technique used by elite athletes. It's proven to increase flow. You don't need to script out the whole day, it can be part of the day. And a great way to work with total flow is not only to train your attention, because our attention is such a valuable resource and it is continually under threat. You can read, more about the attention thieves that exist in our technological world that are trying to, grab our attention with a ping of an email or a notification. Not only does it help you stay on track, but also it's a really great way to validate your own needs. So for me, for example, I would say my kind of big core need is that I don't feel worthy and I don't feel good enough. And even when I achieve things, it just never feels like enough. But what was interesting, and perhaps you'll relate to this, is often we know what we need other people to say. Those moments when you don't get the praise or the thing that you're looking for, and you repeat it back in a conversation, and you say to your friend, like, why couldn't they just have said this? Or why couldn't they just have done that? And you say the exact words that you needed to hear. Total flow is a really good way to do that for yourself. That's a really great example of how whatever you need to hear is already within, and you don't need that, to impose that need on an external person and expect them to validate it. You can take control back and give it to yourself. So often I use total flow to script in things like, I hear myself say how great it feels to work on that presentation, and I feel alive as I create things that really matter to me, and I know that this feels enough. So I give myself that self-talk and those words, and I've learned through the journal system and the process to really self-validate myself and fulfill those needs. And then nighttime reflection is kind of, what it is. It's an opportunity to reflect on your day, really living in these 24-hour blocks and looking at what came up for you today. Looking at the patterns and trends of when you felt in flow, when you didn't feel so great, who were you with, what were you doing? And also a real opportunity to reward yourself for things that went well. So in nighttime reflection, really simple to practice. You just write down 3 things that went well, and really feel, like, really let it in when you do something well, like really let it in how good that feels. And then 3 things that didn't go so well or could have been better, or patterns that you notice, unconscious behavioral loops that you kind of continually seem to be wrapped up in, where you're noticing repeating patterns, the same lesson showing up over and over again, encouraging you to make that different choice so you can formulate a different experience and enter almost like a different reality. And this is just a lovely practice for those of you that really want to find your flow in a very simple daily practice, easy way, noticing when you feel in flow, noticing what things are working well, what things aren't working well in your life, making adjustments, changing it about with your different priorities each day, learning how to validate your needs, learning how to wake up happy. And bit by bit, drop by drop, you really get back to the core of who you are, what you want from life, what your purpose is, what you can offer others. And you feel that ease and serenity as you kind of move with that current of life rather than trying to fight and resist against it. And that is the beauty of flow. You get all of that plus all of those superhuman benefits of achieving more in less time and synchronicities occurring. So I wanted to leave you just with a few kind of tips on this, and to highlight that there are 2 different types of flow. So when we talk about those high flow priorities, what I'm asking you to do is really look at where you have these flow experiences. These are kind of the moments of optimal experience or peak experience where we feel our best and perform our best. They tend to occur in activities that lend themselves to flow, like, you know, it might be in a board game, having a conversation, problem solving, speaking on stage. It could be in sports. What you're really looking for is the characteristics, you know, timelessness. When does your sense of self disappear? Where do you feel in control when you almost just naturally know what the next step is without having to overthink it? Where are you not filtering your thoughts, filtering yourself? Where do you just feel like you're in the zone, like you're fully present and involved in life? Really pay attention to these, and you can screenshot, you know, grab your camera phone and like take a photo of these slides and use these prompts. It can be helpful to have them in your notes section. You know, when you notice and you exit a flow state, you know, just write it down and make a record of it. Like I said, these moments of flow, of peak experiences are really moments when the invisible self becomes visible. And you can almost see it, right? When the presenter is on stage and they're in the zone and they're given that presentation and they almost have this transcendent, otherworldly energy about them. The singer, when they're given that performance and it feels like they've left their body and it's their soul shining through, that's flow. And if you're really confused and stuck in that void like I was, of going, who am I? What do I want from life? Flow and paying attention to that can really leave like a little breadcrumb trail back to who you are. And these prompts are a really helpful way to observe when flow occurs for you, so you can structure your day more around flow. But there is a second type of flow that, again, the Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, kind of like the godfather of flow, wrote about much later in his work, which is unified flow. And this is a very important aspect of flow. Unified flow is when we turn life into a complete flow experience. And this is important because Csikszentmihalyi observed that, you know, well, what if the chess player really feels in flow when he or she plays chess, but then after the game ends, they just exit and they go back to their mundane, uninspiring life? Can we say that flow really makes for a good life then? You know, and he observed that, you know, no, like you can't, it's got to be more than those experiences. In fact, flow needs to be part of our lives and a way that we live our life. And so he contended that we could use his formula for flow and apply it to the whole of life. And generally, characteristics that were in unified flow include this feeling of alignment, this greater sense of control, this trust within yourself, a feeling that you're right where you're meant to be. And what's lovely about this is that unified flow creates this goal hierarchy so that it orders our sense of consciousness and it makes us feel in alignment, because each day, as we're fully present in the moment, we're taking steps towards our future. And so the past, the present, and the future makes sense. Now, I can't put it any better than the way Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi writes about it in his book. So he talks about unified flow and says, if a person sets out to achieve a difficult enough goal, from which all other goals logically follow, and he or she invests all energy in developing skills to reach that goal, then actions and feelings will be in harmony and the separate parts of life will fit together. And each activity will make sense in the present as well as in the view of the past and the future. In such a way, it is possible to give meaning to one's entire life. Oh, that just gives me so many chills. And what's really lovely about unified flow is that it translates really, really beautifully into the journal system. So when you're setting your high flow priorities each day, you can use them for those flow experiences, or you can use them for unified flow, you know, thinking about that large, personally compelling goal that you're working towards, whether it's you know, something fitness related, business related, personal development related, skills related, life and purpose related, whatever it is for you, write that down. And then each day, think of a small goal that logically follows it. Perform that goal to the best of your current level of ability, and just notice how you feel in alignment as that activity makes sense in the present, but also in the view of the past and of the future. And you'll feel this sense of trust and contentment and alignment as you feel exactly where you're meant to be, and you really harness the beauty of unified flow and flow experiences together. So that is an overview of flow, how we can use flow as a scientific guide to becoming who we really are. How when we do that and we become our full selves and we recognize that we're not broken, we don't need to be anything other than we are, that we realize our full potential and release almost superhuman qualities. If you want to read more about the journal system for flow, then you can check out my book, Find Your Flow. You can head to the website, findyourflowthebook.com. There's a list of retailers there from kind of America, Canada, Australia, Europe, UK. You can also, if you just want some daily tips, or you want to connect and you've watched this video and you want to reach out and say hi, I would love to hear from you. You can connect with me on Instagram at The Power to Reinvent, and spread the word. Flow is such an underutilized concept, and it offers a really refreshing way for us to get back to what makes us unique, what makes us whole. And if you've enjoyed this video, then share it with a friend. Share the journal system with them, tell people about it, and spread the message so that each of us can become more of who we really are and less of who we think we should be. Thank you so much for joining me for this masterclass. I really hope that you reach out and connect with me. I would love to hear your thoughts and views on flow. Thank you. Bye.